Hi.
Greetings. We're on page 110 of the Proclaimer's book in the chapter Jehovah's Witnesses, Proclaimer of God's Kingdom. Jehovah's work keeps moving speedily from 1976 to 1992, just before this is published.
Mm-hmm.
And the subhead now is Filling Spiritual Needs with Bible Literature. Well, very ironic considering what's happened since, but we'll get to that in a minute. Jehovah's Witnesses were well fed spiritually before 1976. Oh boy, we've spoken of that one. But an examination of what has taken place since then under the direction of the governing body and its writing committee reveals that the waters of truth have flowed out in ever greater quantities and in more diversified forms. Many of the publications produced have filled specific needs of the witnesses themselves. Special concern was shown for young people to help them to apply Bible principles to the situations they face in life. Your Youth Getting the Best Out of It was published in 1976, and Questions Young People Ask answers that work in 1989. The illustrated publication My Book of Bible Stories, prepared with children in mind, was released in 1978. That same year, Practical Counsel and Guidance for Strengthening Families was presented in Making Your Family Life Happy.
At times, specific needs of Jehovah's people had been addressed by means of timely counsel in the pages of the Watchtower. For example, the worldwide report of the activity of Jehovah's Witnesses for 1977-78 reflected a decrease in the number sharing in the preaching work. Was the decrease at least partly due to disappointed expectations concerning 1975? Perhaps. But there were other influencing factors. What could be done? The governing body took steps to strengthen the conviction among Jehovah's Witnesses that there was a need to continue zealously proclaiming the kingdom from house to house. The Watchtower of July 15, 1979, contained the articles Zeal for Jehovah's House, Preaching in a Lawless World, They Preached from House to House, and What Others Have Said About House-to-House Witnessing. These and other articles reaffirmed that house-to-house preaching has a solid scriptural basis and urged zealous and whole-souled participation in this important activity. And then they have a footnote that says, from 1980 to 1985, there was a 33% increase in the number sharing in the preaching work, and from 1985 to 92, there was a further 47.9% increase.
First, I love this sentence at the end of the first paragraph. What has taken place since, that is since 76, under the direction of the governing body and its writing committee reveals that the waters of truth have flowed out in ever greater quantities and in more diversified forms. So what they do on this page is show you pictures of foreign language magazines that started to be published during these years. And indeed, I remember this was all a boasting point at the time. Look how well we're doing in diversifying the message, making it available to more people in more places. But the numbers, and then you get the next 4 pages, we'll show you that next time, and no doubt the next few videos. 4 pages now of graphs showing the growth during this period up until the publication of the Proclaimer's book. But the irony, of course, that ever greater numbers and quantities of publications, books and magazines going out during this entire period, which is true. But where are you now in this regard?
Yeah.
In retreat.
I think even that first sentence, Jehovah's Witnesses were well fed spiritually before 1976, is kind of ironic, since they're deleting more and more of their publications.
Is anything still
by the Jehovah's Witnesses?
At least in those days, you could say that the All Scripture book was still being published and actually re-edited for publication. But now nothing from that whole era, or even from this era.
And
is in print.
I recall when we first started the channel meeting someone who was an ex-witness, and him telling me that they only, that they, I think at that point they were already not doing the Awake. And that they were only doing like, what, four
Watchtowers a
magazines
year?
a year. I couldn't believe it. Because
Yeah.
they were always, that was their brag point. They were a big publishing company. Well, they didn't say company.
Though they said the biggest private printing operation in the world. This was their bragging point for many decades.
Yeah.
But then you get to the decrease. They allude to the decrease after 1975. The 1977 and 78 rather, worldwide reports. And they speculate then, was it something to do with 75? Perhaps.
Yeah.
They say.
That's as close as you're going to get to an apology, I think.
Then they say, right after saying perhaps, but there were other influencing factors. What could be done? And then they get to the next paragraph about the door-to-door insistence, and they cite several articles during this period from 76 through 79 where they're insisting that this is our responsibility.
And that it is scripturally sound to do this.
A sound scriptural basis. Now, what they're leaving out, of course, is that there was publications put out during the same period that modified their take on these two proof texts from Acts 5:42 and Acts 20:20. Now, we're going to put a link in later to our discussion of this based on what Ray Franz has to say in his books, but also on other research we did, to just show the waffling during this 5 to 10 year period just before 1979, and on whether you could actually use the Acts to justify the preaching work.
So they
don't mention that
they've kind
here.
of flip-flopped on that, because now I've been reading the Bearing one. They're using those same proof texts.
Yeah. And we'll have more about this later when we talk about Fred Franz's attitude to all this, because he's their Bible scholar, right? What does Fred have to say about whether you can use these texts in Acts to justify the work? But for public consumption, it's yes, you have a responsibility to preach house to house.
And if they can get their existing people doing that, they will have an increase. This is just, it's slow, but it's still going to have some kind of an increase. But I think after the 75, the decrease is also because there's a whole bunch of people who've left.
Yeah. Those who have studied the statistics in those yearbooks of that 5-year period from around 75 to 80 make the point that if you look at the number of baptisms and publishers during that period and then realize there was decreases over 2 years, it looks like about 1 million people stopped publishing. Now, they could have just become inactive, or they could have just left the organization, and we know many who did. Now, the acknowledgement here that something went wrong, and that we fixed it by emphasizing the preaching work. No, preaching 1975, before 1975, is the reason you had this big decrease.
Yeah.
And you've actually exhibited the same characteristics over the last 20 years. When you start emphasizing certain things and de-emphasizing other things, people leave.
And I mean, even since that time, you've got them emphasizing the fact that we're getting, people are getting older and older. It should be dying out. There's more and more dying out, so it's got to be this generation, so it has to end at a certain time. Well, then they start waffling on that one.
Yeah.
And make the generation mean something else. That really surprised me too, from the same person who told me about the number of publications.
And I think the numbers in North America anyway, or you might even say the free world, the numbers in the free world became static a long time ago. Really a generation ago, those numbers stalled. It's everywhere else in the world where, for instance, internet is not available, where they're growing. Everywhere where information is flowing free, they're not growing. They're sometimes decreasing. And
then in the last few years, they stopped publishing the stats that they used to have every year in the 75.
Yeah.
In the yearbooks, the yearly yearbooks, they'd have the stats. They stopped publishing them. Well, why is that?
And we've just heard
just
this last weekend
We heard that they're no longer going to insist people even report. They can tick off a box saying, I'm a publisher, but they don't have to report the amount of time or, I think Bible studies they have to report, but publications, and I guess things changed when they started using tablets.
Well, this is where they have now once again become more like Christendom, namely that Christendom keeps statistics, but not with the mania you exhibit.
And not with time spent doing activities for the church.
That's right.
Yeah,
So
they've never
worldwide
done
growth
that.
of Christianity is documentable. That is, there's now 2.5 billion Christians in the world, and statistics are kept, but nothing like the what can we call it? Fascination with which Jehovah's Witnesses view the increase in numbers, whether it be publications or baptized or Bible studies. That fascination with numbers, which is always to token Jehovah's blessing. What does it do now then?
Yeah.
The decreases are static numbers. What do they indicate? And we know there's a spin they can put on that too.
Yeah.
What's our link?
We're going to link the first of a series of videos that you did on the door-to-door work, research that we did, or you did.
So that's one of 6 videos that were on that subject, based on a PDF that you can get on our website, onewonders.org, in the PDF archive. 6 videos based on that publication.
Booklet, yeah. So,
Excuse me.
bless you.
So 6 videos there, and that's just a bunch of videos from the door-to-door playlist, which we'll also put on the screen, right? As well as the onewonders.org.
We'll
link.
note that in the. I hope you do that.
Yeah.
Put that in the. What's that box? Description.
Description.
In the description box,
So
where you can get the PDF.
that booklet, by the way, and those 6 videos detail the flip-flops during the 1970s, which are not mentioned here for some reason.
Yeah. Okay.
See you next time.